My wife confessed her affair, and she thought I would forgive her, but I divorced. I, 36 male, never thought I'd be writing something like this. 3 days ago, my wife of 11 years, 34 female, sat me down and confessed to having a 6-month affair with her coworker. She cried, apologized, swore it was over, and said she wanted to work through this together. Then she looked at me with absolute certainty in her eyes and said, "I know we can get past this." The problem? I knew immediately that I couldn't. When I told her I wanted a divorce, she was completely blindsided. She's been calling me cruel and unforgiving, saying I'm throwing away our marriage without even trying. Her family and some of our mutual friends think I'm being hasty and should at least attempt counseling. But they don't understand what this revelation did to me, how it shattered not just my trust, but my entire view of our relationship. Am I really the bad guy for refusing to forgive the unforgivable? We met in college and married young at 25 and 23. Rebecca was my first serious relationship, and I thought she was my forever. We built what I believed was a solid life together. A beautiful home in the suburbs, good careers. I'm an architect, she's in pharmaceutical sales, and a tight circle of friends. We don't have children, though we'd been discussing starting a family within the next year. Thank God that never happened. The signs were there, looking back. About 7 months ago, Rebecca started working closely with a new sales director, Mark, 38 male. Suddenly, she was volunteering for extra projects that required late nights at the office. Her phone became a closely guarded possession, always face down, always with her, even for quick showers. She bought new clothes, started wearing makeup more often, lost weight. Classic signs that I completely missed or willfully ignored because I trusted her implicitly. 3 days ago, I came home early from work because a client meeting was canceled. Rebecca's car was in the driveway, which was strange since she was supposed to be at a conference in Cincinnati. When I walked in, she was sitting at our kitchen island, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. "What's going on?" I asked. "Aren't you supposed to be at your conference?" She looked up, startled, then burst into tears. What followed was a confession that knocked the wind out of me. "I've been having an affair," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "With Mark. It's been going on for 6 months. I ended it last week, and I feel terrible. He was threatening to tell you if I didn't leave you for him, but I realized I don't want to lose our marriage. I love you, and I made a horrible mistake." I stood there, frozen, as she continued explaining how it started as innocent flirting, then drinks after work, then hotel rooms during lunch breaks. She described how guilty she'd felt each time, how she tried to end it multiple times but kept going back because she was addicted to the excitement. She claimed the affair had made her realize how much she actually valued our marriage. "I know this is a shock," she said, reaching for my hand, which I instinctively pulled away. "But I want us to work through this together. I've already looked into marriage counselors. I know we can get past this and be stronger for it." That's when it hit me. She had prepared for this conversation. She had ended things with Mark, researched counselors, and crafted her apology, all with the absolute certainty that I would forgive her. The audacity of her presumption made me feel physically ill. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. Her face went from remorseful to shocked in an instant. "What? No, you can't mean that. You're just angry right now, which is completely understandable, but—" "I'm not angry," I interrupted, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "I'm done. There's no coming back from this for me." "But people work through affairs all the time," she insisted, panic rising in her voice. "Marriages can recover. We can get counseling, rebuild trust. Don't throw away 11 years without even trying." "Those 11 years," I said. "You already threw them away 6 months ago." I walked upstairs, packed a bag, and left to stay at a hotel. As I drove away, my phone started blowing up with texts and calls from Rebecca, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I needed space to process what had just happened to my life. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Rebecca has oscillated between desperate pleas for another chance and angry accusations that I'm being cruel and unforgiving. Her sister called to tell me I was acting like a child by refusing to even attempt reconciliation. One of our closest mutual friends texted that while he understood my pain, shouldn't I at least try counseling before making such a permanent decision? But here's what none of them understand. This isn't just about the physical affair. It's about the 6 months of elaborate lies. The thousands of small decisions she made each day to deceive me. The fact that she only confessed because Mark was threatening to tell me, not because her conscience demanded it. And perhaps most unforgivable of all, her absolute certainty that she could confess to destroying the foundation of our marriage, and I would simply work to forgive her on her timeline. Am I being hasty? Should I at least try counseling before ending an 11-year marriage? Or is my instinct to make a clean break the right one? Update 1, 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since D-Day, and I feel like I've aged a decade. I've moved out of our house and into a small but decent apartment with a month-to-month lease. I've retained a lawyer and filed for divorce. The wheels are in motion, and there's no turning back now. The day after I left, I called my boss and took a week off work. Then I drove to my parents' house 3 hours away. I needed neutral ground to process everything, people who were firmly in my corner. My parents were shocked. They adored Rebecca and had always seen us as the perfect couple, but their support has been unwavering. Dad helped me find a good lawyer, and Mom reminded me to eat when I'd go entire days forgetting food existed. I didn't tell Rebecca where I was. I turned off my phone for 3 days, only checking messages once each evening. Her texts evolved from apologetic, "Please come home so we can talk," to angry, "You're acting like a coward," to manipulative, "I might have made a mistake, but you're choosing to destroy our marriage." After those initial days of silence, I sent her a brief message saying I was safe but needed space, and that I'd be in touch through lawyers soon. When I returned to the city, I went to our house while she was at work to collect more of my belongings. What I found was disturbing. She had printed out articles about surviving infidelity and how to forgive a cheating spouse and left them prominently on the kitchen counter where I would see them. It felt like another manipulation, another presumption that she could control my response to her betrayal. I was filling a box with some books when she unexpectedly came home early. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, eyes swollen from crying, wearing what I recognized as an old sweatshirt of mine. For a moment, seeing her pain almost weakened my resolve. Almost. "You're really going through with this?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You're just throwing us away?" "Rebecca, I filed for divorce yesterday," I said as gently as I could. "It's over." She collapsed into a chair. "How can you be so cold? 11 years together, and you won't even try to save us?" "People make mistakes, David." "This wasn't a mistake," I replied, feeling surprisingly steady. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument. You made thousands of deliberate choices over 6 months. You lied to my face every single day." "I love you," she whispered. "If this is your version of love, I don't want it." When I left that day, she was calling her sister, sobbing. I felt guilty, then angry at myself for feeling guilty. Why should I carry any blame for the natural consequences of her actions? The fallout has been messy. Some friends have quietly distanced themselves, uncomfortable with choosing sides. Others have shown surprising loyalty. My friend Eric, who I've known since college, invited me over for dinner and said bluntly, "She fucked up, not you. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." Rebecca's family has been less understanding. Her mother called me a vindictive bastard for not being willing to attempt reconciliation. Her brother, who I was once close with, sent a long message about the sanctity of marriage vows and for better or worse. I wanted to ask if for better or worse includes your wife screwing her coworker for half a year, but I refrained. Nothing productive would come from engaging. Then 3 days ago, everything shifted again. I received an email from an unknown address. It was Mark's wife, Jennifer. She had discovered the affair shortly before Rebecca ended it and had been gathering evidence while deciding what to do. The email contained screenshots of text exchanges between Rebecca and Mark going back 8 months, not 6 as Rebecca had claimed. The texts were graphic and painful to read, but what cut deepest were the messages where they discussed me. Rebecca complained about our sex life, mocked my unawareness, and, most devastating of all, told Mark that my desire to start trying for a baby was pushing her further into his arms because she wasn't sure she wanted children with someone so predictable. Jennifer apologized for sharing such painful details, but felt I deserved to know the full truth. She ended by saying she had filed for divorce as well and hoped we could both find peace eventually. Those texts confirmed what my gut had already told me. There was nothing left to save. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I married, doesn't exist. Maybe she never did. Update 2, 2 months later. It's been just over 2 months since my world imploded, and I'm starting to feel like I can breathe again. The divorce proceedings are underway, and while they're not finalized yet, we're making progress. Rebecca finally accepted that reconciliation wasn't an option and agreed to a more amicable split than I initially feared. Small mercies, I suppose. The most difficult day came when I had to return to our house to divide our belongings. We'd agreed to do it while both present to avoid disputes, with a mutual friend acting as a buffer. Walking through the rooms we'd shared, deciding which memories to keep and which to leave behind, was surreal. I found myself detached from items I'd once valued highly and strangely attached to things I'd barely noticed before, like the chipped mug Rebecca always hated but was the perfect size for my morning coffee. The strangest moment came when we reached our bedroom. Rebecca had redecorated it entirely. New bedding, new curtains, even rearranged the furniture. When I commented on it, she said quietly, "I couldn't sleep in the room as it was. Too many ghosts." I nodded, understanding perfectly, yet still feeling like a stranger in what used to be my home. As we worked, Rebecca attempted several times to engage in deeper conversation. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked at one point, her voice small. "If you had been willing to try?" I considered ignoring the question, but decided honesty was better. "No," I said. "I think about what was and what is, but not what could have been." She looked wounded, but didn't push further. By the end of the day, we had divided most of our shared life into his and hers, with remarkably little conflict. As I was loading the last box into my car, she approached me with something in her hand, a small wooden box I'd made for her in our first year of marriage. "You should have this," she said. "I don't deserve to keep it." Inside were all the little notes and cards I'd given her over the years. I'd had no idea she'd saved them all. For the first time since her confession, I felt my composure crack. I closed the box quickly and set it aside. "Keep it," I said. That was a different life. On the professional front, I've thrown myself into work with an intensity that has both impressed and concerned my colleagues. I took on a major new project designing a community center that has consumed my days and many of my nights. The focus has been therapeutic, giving my mind somewhere productive to go instead of endlessly replaying the betrayal. My personal life is slowly rebuilding too. I've reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, realizing now that some of those friendships had faded because Rebecca hadn't particularly liked them. I've started rock climbing again, a passion I'd abandoned years ago because it took up too many weekends, according to my ex. The physical exertion and problem-solving aspects have been remarkably healing. Dating is still a distant thought. Several well-meaning friends have suggested setting me up, but the idea makes my skin crawl. I'm not ready, and I'm not sure when I will be. Trust feels like a foreign concept now, something I intellectually understand but can't quite access emotionally. I've maintained sporadic contact with Jennifer, Mark's ex-wife. We met for coffee once, which felt odd but strangely comforting. There's something uniquely validating about sharing space with someone who understands exactly what you're going through. She's further along in her healing journey, having suspected Mark's infidelity long before confirming it, and her perspective has been helpful. "The worst part isn't even the sex," she said during our meeting. "It's the realization that you were living in a different reality than they were. That while you were planning a future, they were actively sabotaging it." That observation has stayed with me. It perfectly articulates what has been most difficult to process. Not just the betrayal itself, but the profound disorientation of realizing your perception of your life together was fundamentally flawed. Final update, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since Rebecca's confession, and today I signed the final divorce papers. Our marriage is officially over. 11 years together, erased with a signature. It should feel momentous, but mostly I'm just tired. Tired and ready to move forward. The division of assets went more smoothly than expected. Rebecca didn't fight me on much, which my lawyer suggested was due to guilt. We sold the house. Neither of us wanted to live there with its tainted memories, and split the proceeds. I let her keep most of the furniture since my apartment is small, and I've discovered I prefer starting fresh anyway. Building a space that's entirely mine, reflecting only my tastes and needs, has been unexpectedly liberating. I've had a lot of time to reflect on our marriage and what led to its demise. While I'll never excuse Rebecca's affair, I've come to recognize that we both contributed to the distance that grew between us. I worked long hours and often brought projects home. I became comfortable, perhaps complacent, assuming our relationship was solid without putting in the effort to nurture it. None of that justifies betrayal, but acknowledging my role in our growing apart has been an important part of my healing. The most difficult aspect of these months has been encountering Rebecca unexpectedly. Our city isn't huge, and despite my best efforts, we've crossed paths several times. The first time was at a grocery store about 3 months after D-Day. I rounded a corner, and there she was, studying nutrition labels. She looked up, saw me, and froze. I nodded briefly and turned my cart around, abandoning my shopping trip entirely. The second time was worse, a restaurant where I was having dinner with colleagues. She was there with friends, and our tables were close enough that we couldn't pretend not to notice each other. The awkward glances and whispered explanations to our respective companions made for an excruciating evening. But the most significant encounter came last month. I was leaving my therapist's office. Yes, I finally started therapy, and it's been immensely helpful, when Rebecca called my name from across the parking lot. She was dressed professionally, looking more like her old self than she had in our previous brief encounters. "Can we talk?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "Just for a minute?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. We sat on a bench outside the building, maintaining careful distance between us. "I've been in therapy too," she began, trying to understand why I did what I did. Why I threw away something so good. I nodded, but didn't respond. "What was there to say?" "I know it's too late for us," she continued. "I've accepted that. But I wanted you to know I understand now why you couldn't forgive me. It wasn't just the affair. It was that I betrayed your trust in the most fundamental way possible, then expected you to do the emotional work of repairing what I broke." Her insight surprised me. It was exactly what I had felt but struggled to articulate in those initial raw days. "I appreciate you saying that," I said finally. "It helps." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Not just for the affair, but for how I handled everything afterward. For trying to manipulate you into staying. For not respecting your decision." We sat in silence for a moment, the ghost of our marriage hovering between us. "Are you okay?" I asked eventually, surprising myself with the question. "Getting there," she said with a sad smile. "You?" "Same." We didn't say much more after that. There was a brief, awkward moment when we said goodbye, both of us instinctively moving toward our old habitual hug before stopping ourselves. Instead, we nodded, wished each other well, and walked to our separate cars. That conversation marked a turning point for me. For months, I'd been carrying not just the pain of betrayal but also the weight of doubt. Doubt about whether I'd made the right choice. Doubt about whether I was being unforgiving. Doubt about my capacity to trust again. Hearing Rebecca finally acknowledge the true nature of her betrayal released something in me. I felt validated in a way I hadn't before. In the weeks since, I've noticed a shift in myself. I laugh more easily. I've started making plans for the future again. Real plans, not just getting through the day plans. I've even gone on a date, though I was upfront with her about my recent divorce and emotional availability, or lack thereof. As for Rebecca, I wish her well, genuinely. The anger that consumed me in the early days has faded, replaced by a kind of detached compassion. She made terrible choices that caused immeasurable pain, but I no longer need to carry that pain with me. Her actions revealed a fundamental incompatibility in our values that would have surfaced eventually, perhaps in even more devastating ways had we started a family. Sometimes people ask if I regret not trying harder to save the marriage. If I should have at least attempted counseling before filing for divorce. My answer is always the same. No. Some betrayals change the very fabric of a relationship beyond repair. For me, infidelity was always a clear line, and Rebecca knew that. Trust, once shattered, can sometimes be rebuilt, but the relationship that emerges is necessarily different from what existed before. I didn't want that different relationship. I needed, a clean break to build something entirely new for myself. So here I am, 6 months later, divorced, starting over at 36. It's not where I expected to be at this point in my life, but I'm finding my way forward. The pain hasn't disappeared entirely, and I doubt it ever will completely. But it no longer defines me or my days. For those of you facing similar situations, wondering if you're wrong for being unwilling to forgive infidelity, you're not. Forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation. Your boundaries are valid. Your instincts are worth trusting. And sometimes, walking away is the strongest choice you can make.